gone downhill, hasn't it? So many of them closing down. Certainly in the villages and over anywhere in the wilds, they're not doing it. If they don't do food.
Real rocking horses, not the plastic ones you buy in Argos. These are real. The side of the rocking horse is over the top of the door there on your right hand side, and hopefully we've got lots in the window for you to see. Very traditional village, as you can see, built from the Lortel stone, or largely built from the Lortel stone. There's the Elizabethan manor house, and at one time you used to have a Tudor wall garden. Well, it's still got a Tudor wall, but the garden is now a car park. Can you believe that?
I can see it.
Medieval church coming up on the right, and then almshouses dating back to 1656. People that went round York, remember we saw those almshouses from 1952. These are more traditional. And most unusual for this part of the world, it has a really nice sized cottage. If you go down southwest, you see lots of them down there. Not many in Yorkshire. This one has just had a new thatch, and if you look to your right as we go over the bridge, there it is. And these are the almshouses, paid for by one of the wealthier ladies of the area, 1656. And the Tudor wall is just through the trees over to your left hand side, and that used to be the wall garden at one time. A traditional village green with the stocks on, and the stocks are on the floor. These are what they used to sit them in, just by the memorial there. It's a derelict pub, it has been for 4 years, called the legendary Saltergate Inn, and it is up for sale. This pub is. It closed down just 4 years ago for a refurb, that's all, and up to it closing down, the fire in that pub had been burning 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and had been since the late 1600s. And that's where the story all starts, because back in those days it was an overnight stop for smugglers making their way inland from Robin Hood's Bay, which is a smuggler's village. The tunnels are still there. Anyway, customs officers apparently found out about this, and on occasion used to lie in wait for them. The innkeeper at the time must have been in on the deal, because when the customs officers were around, the smugglers never turned up. However, on one occasion, one officer thought he was going to be a little bit cleverer than his friends, and when they left, he hid himself, and eventually along come the smugglers with the contraband and everything. Up he jumps. You're under arrest. Whatever they used to say back in them days. But of course, not wishing to be coaxed is a capital offence. He would have been hung. They murdered this poor chap, and to conceal his body, they dug a grave under the fireplace. And so that nobody would ever think of looking there for him, he kept the fire burning ever since. And the story went, if the fire was ever allowed to go out, the pub would fall into rack and ruin. Well, 4 years ago it closed down for a refurbishment. And whilst they were doing this refurbishment, they let the fire go out. And then owner of the pub, he ran out of money, couldn't finish the job. And you see the pub derelict as it is today. So there might be something in the Saltergate Inn. And people sometimes ask, have they ever found the remains of this customs officer? Well, yeah, they did. They were buried under the fireplace. So that's the legend of the Saltergate Inn. So up to your right then, you can just see the top of RAF Fylingdales. If you'd have been over the moors 25 years ago, you could have seen what were only described as 3 giant golf balls. And the job of those golf balls was to detect any nuclear missile that might have been fired at us from the Soviet Union. And it was from up here at Fylingdales that you used to get your 4-minute warning. Can you remember that? Yeah. 4-minute warning. What would you do in 4 minutes? Dear oh dear. That's what you used to get apparently, and that's where it used to come from. Nowadays, that's what's left. It's being built instead, and unless you work for Ministry of Defence or at Fylingdales itself, nobody really knows what goes off up there. Rumours. You got one of the police cars there, look. Now, people that's come from the south of England, they're really shocked sometimes, and I didn't know this till about 2 years ago. And he came back and they said, he came back to me and said, do you know what they sell up there in the shops? And I said, what? And they said, gollies. And I said, yeah. Well, we're not allowed to buy them where we live. So if you want a golly, you might as well get one while you're here and import it. Now the first abbey to stand on that spot dates back to 657 and was paid for by a lady called Hilda, now known as Saint Hilda. Hilda's father was Edwin, and people that came round on the York City tour, remember, I mentioned Edwin.
Oh, yes.
And they built a church specially for him in York in 637 so that he could become a Christian. Well, Hilda was his daughter, so she was a princess at the time. And back in those days, of course, if you were wealthy and you wanted to make sure you went the right way after leaving this earth, you did something for the church. And that's what Hilda did. She paid for the very first Whitby Abbey up there, 657. Then just a few years later, the Synod of Whitby was held in that abbey up there on the headland. If you've never heard of the Synod of Whitby, it's twofold. Reasons for the Synod of Whitby was twofold. Firstly and primarily was to establish when Easter was going to be, because before 665, and that's when the Synod of Whitby was held, you could celebrate Easter whenever you wanted to with no fixed date. So the two churches around in our country back in those days got together in Whitby Abbey. They read everything that was available to them, which must have been a lot, of course, and they came up with a formula that we still follow to this day. And that is, after 665, Easter would always be the first Sunday after the full moon, after the vernal equinox. And even though Easter is sometimes in March and sometimes it's in April, it is always the first Sunday after the full moon, after the vernal equinox. And all that was established up there at the then Whitby Abbey in 665. And the second reason for the Synod of Whitby was to bring the two churches together, because there was a Roman Catholic Church and a Celtic Catholic Church, and after 665 just became one Roman Catholic Church. And and all that, as I say, was established at then Whitby Abbey. Now the other character associated with the town were Bram Stoker's Dracula. Bram Stoker was staying in the Royal Hotel while he was writing that book, and one night apparently he was looking through the window of his room down into the harbour when he saw a big black dog jumping from fishing smack to fishing smack, and that gave him the idea of how he could land Dracula on our shores. And if you've read the book, you'll know that Dracula sails into Whitby Harbour on a ship that becomes wrecked on the rocks, and to escape he changes into a black rabid dog and runs up the 199 steps and spends the first few nights in Whitby Abbey. As a consequence of that book, you get lots of people called Goths visiting the town, especially last week in October. It's Goth Week, Halloween. This is the Royal Crescent, or it would have been if they could afford to finish it. They never had enough money to finish it, so it only went halfway around. Look. Never been completed. So right there in front of us to the left you've got Captain Cook with the obligatory seagull on his head. There it is. And right in front of us, directly in front of us, are the jawbones of the whale. And this is the Shearing's Royal Hotel here to your right. So now you're looking across to the 199 steps.